Live for episode 21. This is a very special episode for me, not for its numeric next integer value as 2-1 versus, anyways, but Juan Fernandez and I have been sharing a stage since 2017 in various capacitances. He's someone that I very, very, very much look up to in my professional career, and had a lot of parallels, that things that I can only uniquely kind of share with someone who's been in that space. So today we're here to talk about growth. And I'm not talking about the amazing size 58 pants that at some point I wore before I lost all the weight.
Come on,
But
man. What
somewhat of
about
might have
beard?
yeah, that's right. I go to those deprecating ones first, Juan. Thank you. But the point is, listen, we're talking about growth as an MSP, as a constituent living here, or even as a business, and it's going to be a fun time. This is a little bit of that growth episode because I am here with Juan Fernandez, the growth man himself. But Juan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, other than my brilliant introduction for you?
Hey, man. I don't know that I got a lot of introduction. I've been in the IT world for God. It's almost been 30 years, and it's really crazy to even think about that. But in that time, I've had an opportunity to do a lot of things in life and grow a lot of enterprises and grow a lot of companies, and still to date doing the same thing. But one of the biggest things I think is just really being a small business owner. One day, starting off, coming out of heading up government and starting an IT company, and thinking, hey, my greatest go-to-market strategy here on this break fix thing is everyone needs IT, and ultimately I can be cheaper, right?
Yeah.
The old gateway days where I wanted to put together PCs and beat them out on the price, and be able to install softwares and help people. And you know that sounds all fine and great. We all started there, but my story ends kind of a little bit there. I got ready to get acquired and all that good stuff, and then I figured out how to burn that down to the ground, and learn some new words like bankruptcy and foreclosure and all kinds of other things. So although everyone sees a lot of success, and maybe they see my LinkedIn, we're always on stage, man, and we're always doing something fun. They don't understand like all the hardships that come with that. And when you talked about this growth thing, I said, dude, I love this conversation because it's not about what the top of the mountain. It's about all that foundation, all the rubble of all that we stand upon at the very end. So I
Brother,
was
you nailed
excited to
it.
jump in on this, man. So
Yeah.
yep, took that last one. I built a secondary MSP and took it from zero to about 20 million in about 6 years. So, but again, it
Yep.
was to stand on the top of that and plant that flag was just and ashes and rubble all behind it to get to that point. So
Yeah.
really looking
It was. Yeah. Let's dig into that, right? So let's talk about this. If you've ever grown an MSP through the, quote unquote plateaus, right? The one, I think there's one at 3 they described, there's a 5, there's this 8, and then there's uncharted waters that you and I both entered into in MSPs, right?
Yep.
In that 20 and 40 and whatever it may be million range of revenue. And what's interesting is that you watch a lot of things die, and then be reborn a lot. And I think that is the piece that you just said, to stand on top of that mountain, but I understand that it's there's rubble there too, right? Like it's a mountain of rubble ultimately in some
There's
cases.
so many
And I
things you
don't
have
mean
to
that
tear apart.
negatively,
It's
but
not
like think
bad,
about it
right?
this way.
Just
Let's
things change, right? Like as you grow, like teams
yeah,
grow, ebbs, flows. Like no matter what like even in companies that I've invested in, like you just see it all the time. Like certain things happen at a certain stage. We're a certain kind of company when we're really small, and then when we grow, there's a lot of things you got to do to get to that next level. You got to up your
yeah.
game. You got to get more process. You got to get more
Communication
procedure.
breaks down, right? Like native, I sat next to Juan. We both worked on these 4 clients, and Juan goes, I remember Matt saying he was working on client A today on this one thing. Yes, he's definitely doing that comms doesn't scale at 40 technicians running different roles as well as the actual clients they work for. Like it falls apart. Yeah, 100%. Like you look at things like that where you have to go reinvent that. And I think the point is for companies that find themselves stagnating, they aren't reinventing that. They're getting to a wall or a level at which their own internal choice of what they're doing drives their success to a level that you have churn or loss, or the companies don't succeed that you work for. Like we often separate ourselves from our clients from, oh yeah, as long as we're doing our job we get paid. Yeah, but if you do your job, that business succeeds, and then they pay you well, and they grow, and they don't stagnate, and they don't nitpick the challenges. They're with you side by side. Like
Yeah.
people miss that part. There's a real connection to their output.
But
um
let's
but
just
you
stop there.
go ahead.
Stop at that bus stop for a second. Like, You
I'm
know,
there. I'll take a break. I'll open the door.
let's not bypass of doing the job, right? Because if I would have done the same job that I was doing back when I first started my first IT company, and I recognized that if I would have stared at that same wall and said, this is as good as this job's going to get, I would have never, ever implemented any of the change that I needed to. And it was a constant reiteration and a
Yeah.
constant massage past, really kind of moving forward and
Yeah.
then stare and stop staring at the same wall, and it's like I said it a while back, a couple of years ago, and I got a lot of shit for it, where I said, we got to stop being a janitor, put the freaking broom down, like, stop cleaning up messes. You got
That's
to
you I
stop.
stole that from? Man, I
Yeah,
apologize. That's probably was you. I've been using that for a minute too, so I
yeah,
apologize.
I got a lot of trash for it. I think you were somebody that might have pinged me and said, dude, seriously, are we janitors? Like, what the hell are you
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about?
Yeah, but I've
Uh,
used it since then, and you're right. It comes down to that commoditization aspect of what's changing and where we need to be that professional and sitting in the boardroom. And you and I have done a presentation about that before together, I think. So,
And I think that, again, if we do our jobs, right? Our jobs originally were being technicians, and then,
yep,
ultimately, then we started being more of solutioneers, if you will, and then we started being more of consultants, and now we're being business owners out of nowhere, right? And that's where you see that jump, right? Because all of a sudden it's lifestyle, then it's business, then it's an enterprise. You know what I mean? So like you have all these shifts, and all of the stuff that goes into making that happen is tough. And I
yep,
see it all the time. Like now that I do what I do at the MSP Growth Coalition, that's the reason why I started it, because there wasn't a lot of people there for me back in the day that were willing to say, dude, like, here's how this works, bro. Like, don't do that.
yeah,
Like, or maybe be like, here's what's going on over here. Like, you're focusing too much on supporting your customer. You need to be focused on the success of your customer. There were so many things that I wish I would have learned, and that's why I do
yeah,
what
yeah.
I do, because we're just giving back.
Yeah, 100%. We do find ourselves somewhat following similar circles around this
Yeah,
conversation point.
often.
And Matt Haish says, stop being a cost center for your clients and be a productivity multiplier. And I think that categorizes this well of saying it's and when we talk about our clients, we're talking about as MSPs, the customers we serve, that we enable their technology capabilities and drive their security posture and drive their risk posture, right? Those are the things where we've got to understand that I'm not here for a cost. You don't hire your attorney just for a cost. Your
Right.
attorney gets you through things better, writes the right contract, helps you with business negotiations, whatever it may be, gets you out of jail, right? Those have these ancillary benefits that are productivity multipliers. Not being in jail is a heavy multiplier of productivity.
Yeah.
But the point is that from a technology perspective and being that, we have to stop being that commodity side and start driving security and business productivity gains in that direction. And I think if you look at scaling an operation like that, where the technical part is necessarily reduced to a level of normalcy, if you will, right?
Right.
Imagine a world if you were growing an MSP that only had M365 business customers that were Azure Active Directory, had no other stuff but web applications. You'd start seeing a world where I could scale that, and just Juan and Matt could go run that entire organization by having business conversations, right? And a help desk. I mean, it pretty well limits it down to. In fact, that was your model, as I understand it, right? To some
Well,
extent, maybe not as
that
normalcy
was
wise,
my
but
model.
um,
That's why I said, I was like, Matt's straight up dissecting our model here. Hey, I only
no,
got,
no doubt, jail the true remote work experience. Sorry, I just had to quip that. That was great.
it's like,
But yes,
I'll talk about jail here in a minute, but not me going, but just a funny story about it. But, it's one of those things where if you focus on what do you do for your customer, and that's where you got to have a hard conversation. You got to ask yourself, you got to wake up in the morning, you got to look yourself in the mirror, and you got to say, what do I do for my customer? And if it's not empowering to be,
see, you stole the words out of my mouth. I was going to say it better be empowerment. It better be driving their
if you're not,
business
yeah, if
forward.
it's not
Yeah,
generating ROI or increasing productivity or looking at some sort of business outcome, you're doing the wrong thing. And that's where you're having a cost conversation, right? And that's where
same
you're
applies
probably,
to security, Juan. Like
I get it.
me, I
Yeah.
stand mostly in that security vein, but that's the exact same premise of understand the business value, understand how I can make decisions that reduce risk. It's kind of the inverse curve of, that front end of productivity brings money in the front door, and that
Yeah.
security understanding and risk awareness keeps it from falling out the back door, right? If you will. And so it's kind of, those two go very hand in hand. It's just a good corollary
No,
anyways,
and
but,
that's the thing, right? And I used to say that all the time. Look, we're going to implement best practice with our process and our product in your organization, which is going to propel you to success. My job is to build business success, right?
Yeah.
And if I can do, if you're already going to buy a piece of hardware and you're going to buy a firewall and you're going to buy a server, then why don't we just implement all the security policies and procedures and do one step, make one organizational change, implement one control, and then fix the
Yeah.
whole problem? Like, why would we keep making all these multiple steps? Like, there's no point in it. You're going to get frustrated. You're not going to want to do business with me. We're going to be done. If you take that, and again, back to the innovation, right? It took me a long time to have that conversation. But again, if you're not having it, then that's why you're struggling to get past those points, right? You're not generating that customer value. And honestly, that's a really compelling talk track whenever you're having it with. You want to hear the solve for the problem, not let's chip away at this and then we're going to have it again 6 more months and chip away at it and have it again 6 more months.
Or if not the solve, as in the security experience, at least the understanding of the game, the understanding of, hey, we're going to do these things to get you where you need to be. It's going to take us 3 quarters, and here's the gaps we need. And understand that security is going to change, and I need to continually to educate you about it, just like you're educated as a road company about the changes in the state funding methodologies, right, and the changes in how we go to market with contracts with the government. And you stay in touch with that. You have entire departments that do that. We need to understand sometimes that cybersecurity and technology both are an ongoing roadmap that won't ever have some finality, but will at least have stages of that vision being executed, right? And I think
I,
that's one of the pieces that we miss often.
I said something the other day and I don't think it struck as hard as it probably should have. And it has a lot to do with both sides of this fence in business and in security and in general overall conversation is having a practice does not indicate that you have a best practice, right? And it
Nor that
was,
you're in practice potentially, yeah? Like,
yeah, yeah, you're in practice is the beginner phase. I wasn't trying to throw stones
mm,
that hard, Matt, but
no, that's
you
good.
know, it's one of those things where we have to recognize where we're at in business, and those are the same echelons. Like in practice, have a practice, best practice are really tied to, and I see this in the growth coalition a lot with MSPs now that I look at them a different way, is that I can see the hills of operational excellence and looking at the profitability associated with it. So it's kind of this, it's fun to watch because it's like, look, I can tell you how to get here. Here's all the things you need to do, and here's all the stuff we got to do. And it's so freeing. It's fun to watch, modern business owners open the door. I mean, it's like they
Yeah.
kick the door on the world open, and it's like
Yeah.
light
I,
bulb goes off, and it's like, oh my god, it can't be that easy. And it's like it is.
it is. Well, and it takes a level of maturity, and I tell myself a couple times a year. I try to like limit it, but I was at a leadership meeting in 2014. I want to say it was something like that, and we had grown into I think a few $1 million revenue MSP. We were at a point where we had a lot of rock stars, right? We had a lot of really good
Sure.
technicians and people that could go manage an account. It was great, and I genuinely, puffed up like a big dork that I am, and said, "Do we even want to become a process-driven company? I don't think that makes sense. We should just keep hiring rock stars." Like it was the dumbest sentence to ever come out of my mouth in technology. I think as I started to realize scale included process always,
Always.
right? You had to have the glue frameworks to
Yeah.
make it make sense. But it was so funny because I genuinely felt that way. And I think there's a lot of people that are sitting there on that cusp that, to your point, stop staring at the wall and maybe wrap your head over and look around at the scenery beside you. You might realize, hey, we're locked because we can't hire enough rock stars. Every time they leave, they headhunt away our clients. We're dealing with these things and having to deal with it contractually. We never win them in court. We're not, why are we struggling? So when in reality, just shifting to a mentality that understood the level you were at, in order to go to scale, you had to make B players A players. You had to do that through process and documentation, education, and setting them up
Yeah.
for success, right? And the same principles apply to security and segmentation and internal caring about that for you, for your clients. And so, anyways, just fun
No,
thinking
and
back through those positions.
I say this often, and I was on a webinar just before this one earlier today, and I said during the pandemic, people voted with their employment, man. And here's
Yeah,
the thing, like they wouldn't the conference. What they said was, "I'm getting more money over there." No, they weren't. They were voting on whether in business or not. And I can see a lot of businesses where people have left You want to know what that
Yep.
tells me? That tells me you don't have a process for success. And you know what that means? You don't have a process for your customer success either, right?
Yeah.
So when you don't have a process for your customer success, your employees can point it out
Yeah.
by
Because if it's
them.
all
You know,
about you
they're
being
like,
profitable,
hey,
there's never that wonderful, meaningful relationship of, man,
yeah,
every time I
they
call
don't.
Sally, she solves
Right.
my chat. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, 100%. Customer
Okay.
success is the best part of that. And I love Shiva. Thanks. I already said I'm telling on myself, dude. So why would you kick me in my one good eye? That's not okay. Right? Like we treat each other like friends here, buddy. Yeah, true story though. One process is worth 10 rock stars.
We're
And
gonna
it
have to
also builds in
give them 10 points.
defensibility and yeah. I was stupid and I've come to understand the woes and
Man,
failures in my ways, right?
we all think that, right? I mean, when we start our own business, we all think we're right. We all think that we're the ones that are going to figure out how to take the world over. I get it, man. I was there. You know what I mean? And until you realize if I don't build a repeatable process, then how in the hell am I ever going to scale it? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
man.
that's where I call it. I created a profit protection program. I know that that's been snatched up several times, and
It also turned into a loan. Wasn't that what that was called? The PPP loan? Is that the profit? Maybe not. I don't
yeah.
know. Maybe
Well,
I'm
I
off
didn't.
topic.
If you did it right, you didn't have to take the loan, man. I mean, you just kind of had the money sitting there, right? But we,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying anything there. I'm just saying, like, as far as business goes, like, how are you packaging and pricing your program around it, and then
Yeah.
keeping the right people, building the right process, and one that's scalable. I created a machine. What I created there, I created a franchise, and we did it a number of times, over and over, repeatable. But we kept refining it to a point that we really got it down. And a lot of people are like, "Hey, man, what all did you sell?" And I'm like, "We didn't. We just sold success." And it was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like for the most part, we stopped selling hardware. We didn't sell hardware. We sold managed services, and we
Yeah.
sold our program. We were the product. And I tell everyone that, like, everyone's always looking for KPIs and trying to be like everyone else. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Stop for a second. Do you want to be like everyone else? Because if you want to be like everyone else, which I can give you a color by numbers book, and you can be like everyone else. But if
Yeah.
you're going to be who you are, you need to figure out what's important to you, and then build the KPIs that are important to you, and then build the process that supports those KPIs that are important to you, that drive your business, to build the business in the world on it, not to be
Yeah.
like everyone
100%.
else, right? So yeah, it's yeah,
Shiva
Harry.
goes on to say here, the reliance on the PSA without processes built out is an Achilles heel of the average MSP. I don't disagree. I think what started as a PSA is a time tracker, and that's what its job is, and it's going to let us make sure if we're counting our beans, the beans have been counted
Yeah,
appropriately,
yeah, yeah, sure,
right?
sure.
And your definition and my definition of the PSA really is the human element automation that has to exist to tie into all the other best practices and things we can actually automate. And what I mean by that is like ticket comes in
100%.
for a project, comes in and it says, okay, I've got these things we can automate, that part, but the ticket to make the human do it and to track that and to elevate it and to move it up KPIs and see if it needs another path for someone to do this because this person's out and the failure stopped at this point. Like you start seeing a world where the PSA should be a way to automate the processes that you've vetted and the things that you've set up as part of your policy from a cybersecurity
Yeah,
perspective, but also from a business objective and outcome perspective. I mean, right? The way you configured an exchange server made a difference in whether or not its index would crash half the
yeah,
time in the
I do
2013
remember.
days,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Back
all
then,
about. Yeah.
you only know is because ask me how I know. Built the crashing one time.
Dude, that's
So
the only reason we backed up Exchange. Come on, it's because we knew we were restoring those freaking indexes. We met that way. If you remember, when we and you met, that was the conversation that we had at that table, and it was a heated one about automation versus people. You
oh,
remember
I
that?
totally
We
remember it.
went
I have an
off
eidetic
on that.
memory. I was a dick, and you don't have to keep pointing it out. Like
I
obstinate,
didn't say
arrogant.
that,
Sure,
but
sure, sure.
we went off on that conversation when we first met, and I remember you said, "I don't know if I like you right now, but you might be right."
It was in Puerto Rico, right? Was that where we were? Was in Puerto Rico
Yeah,
for Watch Guard? Yeah, 100%.
that was funny.
It's funny,
So,
dude. Yeah.
and to that point, I think everyone here, it's just uh, you're right. Able and should align and sync across all processes. It's
Oh,
just a
I'll
way
bring
to
these
make.
up for you. This is just in the one way we can see it. We got to show it to the audience down here.
Yeah,
Shit.
there is, and that's where I think I get this a lot of times where MSPs now ask me, Juan, just give me the magic wand.
Yeah.
Like I just want to wave it, and I
Get
just
it in
want to know
security class. They go and say, I walked out and I didn't I didn't get anything immediately tactical I can work from. Yeah, but you should have learned 18 things that you're not doing right now, at least to the extent they should be like. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, I'll get off my soapbox, man. I got a little hurt there. Somebody
No, and
touched
it,
me
and
in
it
the
is
place on that
true.
one. So.
And it's not that, it's again, it's the part where you're at and understanding where you're going to go. And you have to be there and able and open-minded to get there. Right. And if you're
Yeah.
still back here looking and staying inside of your own head saying, I'm going to do this my way, and I just want you to tell me the number so that I can make this my way number.
Yeah.
That's the wrap around and say, okay, what am I trying to do here? And what is the customer outcome? I need to start at the end and I need to figure my way back.
Amen.
The way I built mine and the reason that I had it done when I walked into it, I knew exactly where we are going. I knew who we needed to hire. I knew how many people I needed. I knew what salespeople. I knew the process I needed to happen.
Yeah.
I knew what needed to happen. I had my own help desk and I said, you know what? I'm never going to become profitable. So I subcontracted it off. Mm-hmm. And then I became uberly profitable and I could scale at such a rapid pace and brought all the high-end technical back in-house and was able to deliver that and really drive what I wanted to do was right. And I wanted to grow a huge MSP. I didn't want to hear all the damn noise. If I took a ticket, I don't even know that I ever really, I know I did. I had to recover a server one day over Thanksgiving because everybody was off and I wasn't going to call them back. But that is the one. You have to think differently, right? And that's where you have to understand the type of business you want to be. And I think that's where, if we're talking about growth, you have, for those that are joining us here today, if you're thinking about growth, what does that mean to you? Like, where do you want to go? And then align your business to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is kind of the point, is that most of us that are enterprise builders in ConnectWise's classic definition of this, right, are talking about growth in net new heads under management and profitability maintaining X, right? Like that's growth, for some exit or some other methodology. But growth to you could be a lot of things, right? I mean, it could be growth in capabilities and service delivery and your own customers' growth, but not growing number of units and heads, maybe potentially. But there's a lot of things that are in the growth category that might not be the traditional business growth we think of in that way. But let me hit a couple things Matt Haish put in. He says, when you talk about process, I found you can get stuck in the weeds. Where do you start when you're looking to standardize process? What's the biggest immediate ROI, Juan?
The biggest immediate ROI is packaging and pricing.
Sure. So as in retrospectively to your prior customer base, is that the focus in this?
Funny. When I come into an organization or I look at things, is looking at your customer profitability and actually benchmarking again your true COGS and saying, here's what my actual
and even if the COGS are wrong in the way you've assumed them, and they're being applied across them universally, you still develop a bottom third in profitability, right? The ones that cost you more than they're worth in most cases.
Most of the time when I walk in, I'll look at that, and then we say, look, even if we didn't land a new customer within the next 24 months, you're going to become, extremely profitable because you've gone in and actually monetized the actual relationship with that particular customer. And it's really about packaging and pricing and really understanding what it is and the value that you're bringing and the things that you're trying to put into your customers and really what is the way that you're actually making money off them, because getting more customers is not the answer, right? True. That's just going to compound the problem that you have, Go ahead.
During a few years of our growth in the MSP that I was at, and just to set the stage for everyone, I wasn't the primary monetary investor. That was Chris Hoos, amazing gentleman. But I was an owner, right? I was allowed to put my money where my mouth was and buy a stake in that very early, but a very small percentage owner. But the point was, for a while there, we were really doing a great job for our customers. We were onboarding a lot. We were having growth happen, but we were extremely ignorant to the fact that they were growing. And what I mean by that is we didn't have great packaging of our stuff to say automatically this is going to go up based on the number of humans, or we had these account managers and they had to deal with that. And the challenge was, one day we woke up and it was after Pensione's book about, the pumpkin plan. I think it was Pensione. I may be wrong.
I keep hearing about this.
Doing
Someone told me about it the other
Oh,
day.
it's like, well, don't read it. You're just gonna hate it. It's exactly what you're talking about. So, anyways, they took and said assess your client base and look for that bottom third, and then we went to those bottom third, and a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Sanchez, who has since passed away with COVID, but went to every single one of those customers and brought as much as 300% and 500% increases in price because they had gone from 26 users to 100, and we were too stupid, or we weren't charging them enough because we haven't adjusted it and gone back to that. And so we sunsetted all our old contracts and went through and said, here's the new contract, here's the new delivery, here's the stuff we're going to do, here's the things we need to charge you for. And we expected people to fire us. We actually had one or so that left. I think it was one.
And they probably
Over the
should have
time, it was
gone.
2 or 3. But the others just took the new price and then actually engaged more in the things we were asking for, said yes more to projects, and spent even more. And what that taught me, at least in my understanding of it, was I was the problem. We were the problem. Not asserting the value we expect to receive and sharing that information and growing with their growth and understanding that you're in a business lets them almost know they're taking advantage of you, but understand it's in their business best interest to continue to do so. And that doesn't generate respect. That doesn't create you as a trusted business advisor. In fact, you might be looked down upon by those
And
businesses.
that is
So
often the case, right? That's the go back to what you said in the beginning is in practice. A lot of businesses take advantage. There's some savvy business owners out there that recognize that whether or not what you're doing based on the conversation they have with you at the table and their ability to push you down on cost.
yeah.
Surely in business, I remember my favorite conversation that I would have was, look, they're saying if I $30,000 a month customer. Well, Juan, what if we buy more? Does it go down? And I'm like, no, because the quality of the product doesn't go down. I figured out what my total cost of goods are, and I have a cost of staying in price that you're going to get right now in front of you. I'm not going to change my price, and nor did I. And we wouldn't. I wouldn't. The salespeople would constantly, if we got these salespeople that like to do weird stuff with pricing,
No.
we go in high.
Salespeople trying to make their paycheck. This is
Hey
crazy,
man,
Juan
I don't want
Fernandez.
to
I don't even
insult a
believe you.
lot of my friends. I'm going to lose like 1,000 followers.
Yeah, you
right?
might lose 1,000 followers over that statement. I still
Just
love you,
there.
salespeople. I get why you
I
do what you
do.
do.
I'm just saying, there's some of them do some things sometimes, and
True
they'd be like,
story.
"Juan,
True
can we
story.
come in high and land low?" And I'm like, "No,
No.
we still have value. It's not about."
Well, and you make a sales guy go sit through an onboarding team that's overwhelmed because you've sold 7 new deals that shouldn't have happened, that aren't priced right, that don't come with you. Like at one point, we were like 7 or 8 onboardings behind. Like we were sitting with
That's what I mean.
firewalls and boxes on shelves, not being able to be deployed. Like the quality of the product diminishes in the reduction of the price,
100%,
right?
and that's why you have to be.
Yeah,
And that's a mature business conversation. Like, look, if you want me to be cheaper, I'm not going to do business tomorrow. So let's just burn both of our businesses to the ground today.
yeah. Let's go have a
Let's
nice
just
beer and call it a day.
I've
Yeah.
already burned a business to the ground by being cheaper. You know what happened? I lost everything. And I'm going to tell you that I'm not allowing you to do that to yourself right now. Right. So
Yeah.
it's just, Matt's got a good one. Go ahead.
Yeah, he says partners need to stop being afraid of making profits. I think that's tempered a bit by you have a lot of people that got into this world because they like the beauty of building something in front of them. The business piece is something that comes as a secondary concept. And so I agree with you in the being afraid, but I really just mean it's kind of rich dad, poor dad, right? Joking aside. If you're always conditioned and told that you need to be successful and conditioned and told that you have things in front of you and how to use them and the ways to weaponize them if necessary and the ways to, then you're much more conditioned to be successful
Right.
than if you're told that there are blocks in front of you, right? It's this whole reason for serving, disserved populations in my mind. But I agree with you in that statement and saying if you run your business into the ground to keep happy clients happy, you're doing both businesses a disservice. Amen. True story.
I
And ultimately for us, like Juan, we had 170 employees. Now it's 400 in the company that was the conglomerate out of that, right? Like talk about running businesses. You're theoretically ruining lives. You're theoretically making the experience for the day-to-day technician like they are in that burnout that I talked about with Nathan Taylor so deeply, right? Like you have to get in this world where
that happens by staring at numbers that you shouldn't be looking at. You know what I mean? Like,
help me understand. What do you mean?
Looking at KPIs that are out on the internet, like, oh, I should be that number. And it's like, you're not mature enough to get to that number. So why would you even start even trying to play with that number? Like that's, and it's not truly understanding all of the numbers. That's why when people ask me for KPIs, I
You won't just give them a blanket answer. Yeah.
No,
Everybody
and
hates me in cybersecurity because it's always it depends. And it's
yeah,
this
it does
dilemma that the
depend.
more you know about it, the more it depends. Right? Like
Yeah, and that's the part. It's like how much do you okay, how far down the rabbit hole can I tell you and what can you consume? Because there is a big, bad, ugly world
yeah,
back here. And I can, if you want the little rabbit ears, then I'll tell you that because you
yeah.
can only handle that, right? So and I remember that movie that said
Another
you
term,
can't
it's
handle
meet
the
them where they are, right? Like meet them where they are is the concept
yeah,
of
do you
that.
remember that movie that said you can't handle the truth? And
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't even know what the
Yeah.
name of
A
that
Few
movie
Good
was.
Men, as I recall,
Was that
was
it?
the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, man, and it's
Oh, look at Shiva poking on this, and he's not
what's he say?
wrong. Yeah, you can go through it. Here it is. What if an entire industry, we're not going to name an industry, of course, Shiva, is aligned, stack, and setup wise? Does it become harder to identify gaps and issues from that alignment? Depending on the intention of that, like just in general, yes. Okay, there you go. He further clarifies due to confirmation bias. Yeah, absolutely. I think especially if I have this theory I've been kicking around, Juan, where, and it's probably like something well stated, and I'm just not educated enough, and I'm really just opening my mouth and showing my ignorance. But I have this theory that products never, ever, ever rise beyond a certain degree or below a certain degree of maturity of the consuming entity, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say you're buying from an RMM provider, and then also in that same stack they've bought a PSA, and also in that same stack they've bought a there isn't enough maturity to say, did you actually recode these and put them together and have some real infrastructural check to make sure they're good and that you're following modern coding practices? Nobody's asking that question, but guess what? Now I am, and have been for 5 years. And as you start seeing that consuming maturity rise,
Yeah.
it's how that company responds to that and how they deal with it, right? Like certain companies have sued people out of existence for these things. But to the internal question, Shiva, I think that you have to. There's Luis. He's somewhere. He's around you somewhere. He
Yeah, I
needs to jump
told
in
you.
on here.
He's
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
he's gonna knock on my door here in a minute.
But I do genuinely believe that there's a confirmation bias, but I wouldn't call it that. I would call it a lack of market conditions to require maturity to increase, and that's changing drastically.
Here's
But
the
yeah,
and I talk about this all the time. Like, and I didn't get into business to be like anyone else. I never did, and nor will I
yeah,
ever.
agreed,
I always
Shiva.
want to be a unique version of me. And I tell a lot of MSPs, stop trying to be like that. Like, what do you do? What is your unique you? Like, if you're just reselling products and services, yeah, yeah, is it on? Just one of those things. Like, how do you create your unique messaging? What is your
Right.
unique proposition? What's your value proposition? I have a whole exercise called the value visualizer, and it breaks down who you are. And it doesn't just ask the business owner, it asks the company. And oftentimes, it's interesting to see who they think they are
What do
is
you mean
not
by
who they
ask the company? Do you mean like other constituents and stakeholders in the company,
the
or
whole
is it?
everybody in the company.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, like I want to know what everybody
Nice.
thinks. When we talk about customers' needs, wants, and fears, I'm getting a different answer from the help desk guy than I'm getting from the sales guy that I'm getting from the business owner. And that
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about is giving everybody a voice to be able to build something new and interesting. And it's often interesting to see what comes out of that,
Yeah.
and it's like a
It's almost
whole
like a SWAT. I mean, I love
it's
doing a
kind of like a
company-wide
SWAT.
SWAT.
Yeah.
Like it's really fun. Yeah. We did
Yeah,
that at Iconic early on, or Choose Networks early on. It was fantastic.
I do it often with MSPs that I work with because I think it's really fun to see, and it brings out the three uniques of their business, right? And it
It's true.
really spells out what makes them special, and all of a sudden their tagline's different, and everybody's like kind of chanting to it, and then they're
And then
like,
once that aligns, like it lands, right? Because they've already been that. They just didn't know
yeah,
that's what they were, right? Like,
yeah, and
yeah,
then
I
you
love
can
that.
start looking at things completely different. Like, okay, maybe I align different.
Good seeing you, Shiva. Appreciate you as always, buddy.
Oh, is it?
Um, he got to go. He's always picking up kids or driving. He also always has his
Ah,
daughter in the room, which is fantastic. Anyways, it's fun. But anyways,
like as in naming it another episode, like being,
yeah. And this
the
is
day.
Juan and Matt, Daddy Daycare. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, this is
yeah.
great. Yeah, this is fun. Well, that's usually the case anyway. People have to handle me in general, but so I agree with, that aspect of like knowing who you are, but when we're talking about growth beyond that, like how does an owner of an organization at an MSP ensure alignment and that there's enough what's in it for me for these very highly demanded resources now, right? Like
Yeah.
one of the challenges you have as you grow is you lose some of the magic of that camaraderie that existed when it's just Juan and Matt, and I might be help desk number 2, and I'm sitting there with 5 other people, and I feel a part of your thing. I feel like I'm magically in your thing. And
I
now as you
think
grow to have 100 employees, how do you make that feel the same? And I know that wasn't the way you built what you
that
built,
is exactly
but
how
it's
I did
similar.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how I did it. So the part about it is that I have something that I always say: if the problem equals one is the problem.
Okay.
And I get out of the damn way. I empower people to be successful. I build a process and I hand it to somebody and say, "It's yours now. Go." And then you come back and report. Let me know where we need to
Yeah.
be at. What does good look like from your seat operating that plant? And I hand it off, and I make them part of the company, and I show them where their impact is being made. And all of a sudden, guess what? Did you hear what I just gave them? I gave them a KPI.
Yeah.
Now they're responsible for it, and whoever's around them is responsible for it. And then I say, look, guys, remember what that thing you're working on? Look at what it's doing to the P&L. You guys are freaking killing it right here. And look at where we're making the money, and the customer satisfaction's up. And guess what that's doing to profits? Like, I show them the impact that they make on the organization.
So is
And
your
that's what,
assertion that people, even without ownership or monetary inclusion in that, besides their paycheck and maybe bonuses and ancillaries, right? Is it really just people want to be successful? I mean, is that essentially what you're giving them, is the ability to control their destiny and rewarding them and showing them when they've made success? Is this how simple it is, Juan? We just need to affirm other humans around us and tell them when they're doing a good job and give them the ability to
dude,
make
you can
themselves
see how
succeed.
you're
Holy
impacting.
crap. Yeah, yeah, it's just that
Well,
simple.
it's just that easy.
Yeah,
And I'll be honest with you, like, that's how I'm doing it, and I continue to do it. Like, and I empower other businesses to do it. Like that, it's
yeah,
just really that easy, and it's not. It's just really tying it. But again, back to that process. Unless you have it dialed down to a place where, and it sounds like it's hard, but it's not. Trust me,
just
guys,
effort. Yeah,
gals, everyone that's participating. We do this all the time. I've done this a number of times. It takes you 6 months. I mean, and you're ready. You got a really great plan, and you've got a great process, and everybody knows the impact that they're making in the organization, and you can illustrate it, make it even fun, maybe even gamify it,
yeah.
do whatever you want with it, but at least illustrate where they're contributing, and then everyone gets behind that thing, and before you know it, you have an amazing company, dude.
Yeah. It's fantastic. You added an ESOP as an exit strategy, and you've got everybody ready to buy too, right? So you have some
There
interesting
you go.
methodologies
See,
there.
now so everyone's investing in success. It's not just I'm throwing the ball and, oh my
Yeah,
God, Mary's mad again, and, oh,
yeah,
let's go make Mary happy.
yeah.
Like, I want Mary to be happy.
Well,
So
you've literally just described my life at PAX 8, so it's it's I feel empowered for success. I feel like I'm allowed to go and just
look at
drive
what they're
my
letting you
mission.
do. Like, even
Yeah,
now
it's
you're
awesome.
on, like, you got the Pax 8 logo on the back, but you got
Yeah,
your own show running like that.
yeah,
That's what
100%.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's
You're
cool.
evangelizing how happy you are at that
Yeah,
organization
yeah.
because you can see the impact you're
I have
making.
control of my destiny, and we're now following OKRs, which is objectives
Hmm.
and key results methodology,
Yeah.
and so that has that similar kind of tangential impact understanding for that, right? And where you make that difference and key achieving some goal. It's kind of like saying, well, we've got to breach this wall. Yeah, but there's a lot that goes into it. Somebody's got to get over the river. There's an aspect of having the explosives for the wall. There's the aspect of having the knowledge of where to put them. There's the ability to
Yeah.
defend and egress. There's like a lot that goes into that, that's not necessarily always as immediately seen of, other than understanding the whole objective, if you will, right? And why this bridge matters and why these people getting across matter, that kind of side of it. But
Yeah.
no,
Well,
that's awesome. So if you could leave people with, you got 7 minutes, so we got a few more, but if you want to leave people with a thought around how can they achieve growth in their organization, how can they know where they sit? Like, where do you start if you're trying to figure out, I want to go and ramp this thing up and have real growth, right? Which, that moment you decide.
one of the things that, I use a number of different answers to that.
And you've already gotten like 500 credits, so this is the 1,000 credit bonus question. Just to understand, you already cashed in quite a bit on this game show, Juan. So
Well, let's just put it this way. Let's do, so there's a couple different ways. And one of them is, do you have a budget? If you don't have a budget, that's a pretty good place to play. I mean, if you're wondering why you're not making any money, it's probably because you're not planning on making any money. That's one. Number two is dive into your customer profitability, figure out if you're making money on it, package and price your products at least at 50% margin or higher. Make sure that whatever resources that you're utilizing on your internal side are actually doing the work they're supposed to be doing. That's the real great leverage of the PSA is, what's your utilization rate? If 35% utilization is good for whatever the role is that they're performing, then 35% should be earmarked as efficient, and you should show profitability inside of 35%. But if your 35% is losing you the 60 some percent of profitability because they're spending too much time on customer problems, and again, you got to look at those things and then make those adjustments, and then allow some of those decisions to push you profitability growth or employee engagement growth or culture growth or whatever growth means to you, and then just kind of focus on those things and place your focus there, and then support those with your process or procedure that you put in play.
So I like what you said there, because you basically broke down what you were talking about earlier in this. I won't just give somebody a metric. And the reason for that is there's so much that we can't quantify that those metrics have to mean something to your output, right? As in the sense of, we always talk about levers. I pull this lever and something happens. Guess what? Another lever moves. That's how this works. And you have to understand that at some points to you could have at 30% utilization be meeting all the KPIs you need from a monetary perspective. Clients are moving forward in their journey. And that might be your number. And I'm not saying that you should be like wildly egregiously different. We're all going to be kind of similar in the ways we choose to do things. But I do agree there's efficiency delineations that don't allow you, and I think that's your statement, to be able to just give static metrics that you just go grab. They need to be adjustable based on other factors.
I don't want to tell you guys to be like everyone else. I'm just not going to, nor will I. I actually do care if you're successful, because everyone that is then comes back and says, dude, that day you said that, it changed my business. And I'm like, high five.
Like, I love it.
You know what I mean? And like, tell me more about to make those changes. Like, I want to hear about that. Not like, I'm like everyone else.
And most people don't know this. You're one of my regular friends that I try to drive and see and be with and have lunch. And, I came through Dallas and you met me at our barbecue joint, right?
Yeah, we did.
So this is one of those things. I think that's why I'm so endeared to you, is I know that your real care is about that end success. I mean, even in the way you talk about the customers, the people that are your internal customers, that are your employees, and the way that you're trying to empower and give them the capabilities of growing. So I'll state this publicly. Juan is a friend of mine. If you ever want to harm me, you could kidnap him. That would be valuable.
If you kidnap me and take me to Matt Lee's house, then he'll be happy, because we've been meaning to try to
we have been meaning to get right here on this studio together at some point.
I know. So, that's somebody be doing us a favor. I might enjoy the ride to vacation.
I'm going to close it out. I really appreciate you, Juan, as always. I know you're at a show. Where are you at today?
I'm in St. Louis.
Nice. I don't want to give away my position, but you're not too terribly far from me now. So that's good.
Oh, you have a secret bunker now.
I do. Well, at least I put out a lot of OSINT scattering you see in Top Gun when they throw out all the chaff behind the airplanes for the bombs and the missiles. Like, that's all I'm doing, is throwing out some bad data. It was funny. I had a video I did, and a guy that's a friend of mine in the OSINT space reached out and he goes, "You made a mistake." I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "You named this service provider, and here's the map of their locations, and here's the map of the stuff that had outages based on the thing you were talking about. I think you live in this quadrant." I'm like, "I hate you with my whole heart, but you're right."
Yeah, well, so, there you go. We're trying to find where in the world is Matt Lee again.
Yeah, brother. I sure appreciate you, Juan. Thank you for everything you do for the community and me as a friend.
Thank you guys for having me. It's amazing being here. I'd be happy to jump back in at some point.
We'll have an emeritus session one day. See you, brother.
All right.